The airline mogul's daughter was seizing on the terminal floor, her lips turning gray, and none of the 12 executives standing around her knew what a diabetic emergency even looked like. 20 feet away, a boy with a Shoeshine kit nobody had looked at twice all morning was already running toward her. Nobody in that terminal knew his name. He was 12 years old, and he polished shoes for tips near Gate 3 because his mother's hospital shifts didn't cover both their rent and his school fees. But before this morning ends, one of the richest men in the industry would be on his knees on that marble floor, holding the hand of a boy who owned nothing but a Shoeshine box. His name was Elias. His mother, Fatima, had been a nurse in a public hospital back home before visa paperwork, and a war neither of them talked about brought them here with almost nothing. She now worked double shifts at a nursing home across the city, and Elias spent most afternoons at the airport, not because it was allowed exactly, but because the terminal manager, an older woman named Consuela, quietly let him set up near Gate 3, where the light was good and the businessmen tipped well if their shoes actually shined. What none of the executives in that terminal understood was that Elias had spent years absorbing everything his mother said at the kitchen table after her shifts. The symptoms, the signs, the small details that meant the difference between a bad moment and a fatal one. He knew what low blood sugar looked like because his mother had once shown him exactly how to recognize it in an elderly patient, using their own kitchen as the example, using an orange and a spoonful of sugar as the props. The man watching his daughter seize on the floor was Marcus Whitfield, founder of a private aviation empire worth more than most small countries, a man who had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions without breaking a sweat, and now could not remember how to dial for help correctly, his hands shaking too badly to unlock his own phone. Elias did not wait for permission. He dropped his Shoeshine box mid-step and crossed the terminal floor at a dead run, kneeling beside the girl before the first security guard even registered what was happening. He turned her gently onto her side, checked that nothing was blocking her airway, and asked the crowd in a voice far steadier than his age should have allowed whether anyone had glucose tablets or even a juice box in a bag. A flight attendant produced an orange juice from a cooler near the gate desk. Elias tilted the girl's head carefully, waited for a pause between convulsions, and got small amounts of the juice safely past her lips, exactly the way his mother had once shown him with that kitchen table orange, timing it, never rushing, never panicking, speaking to the girl the entire time in a calm, low voice, even though she could not yet hear him. A paramedic on the terminal staff reached for Elias's shoulder to move him aside. Marcus, still on his knees, said only, "Let him work." 90 seconds later, the seizure eased. The girl's breathing steadied. Color crept slowly back into her face. Elias stayed exactly where he was until the real paramedics arrived, gave them her exact symptoms in order, the approximate time everything began, and then quietly stood, picked his Shoeshine box back up off the floor, and turned to walk back toward Gate 3 as though nothing unusual had happened. Marcus caught up to him before he reached his spot on the floor. Because what Elias did on that terminal floor is the most visible part of this story, but we believe there was a quiet chain of kindness that made it possible long before that morning. 2 years earlier, a retired ER physician named Dr. Whitcomb had started volunteering one evening a week at the community center near their apartment, teaching basic emergency response to anyone who showed up. No cost, no registration required. Elias attended 6 of those sessions before he turned 11. Sitting in the back row taking notes in a language he was still learning. A neighbor named Ms. O'Dallas, who ran a small corner store, let Elias sweep the floors after school in exchange for day-old bread and a warm place to sit while he waited for his mother's shift to end. Never once treating it like charity, always calling it a job well done. And Consuela, the terminal manager, had quietly arranged for Elias to keep his Shoeshine spot near Gate 3 specifically because she had noticed months earlier how carefully he watched the departure board. How badly he wanted to belong somewhere that felt permanent. None of them were in that terminal that morning. All of them were. Dr. Whitcomb's Tuesday classes, Miss O'Dallas's warm corner store, Consuela's quiet permission, they all arrived on that marble floor the moment Elias's hands moved with certainty. This is what we believe. No small kindness is ever wasted. It travels quietly for years, waiting for the exact second it is needed most. Marcus found Elias back at his Shoeshine stand an hour later, already polishing another pair of shoes as though the morning had been ordinary. He sat down across from him, uninvited, and asked him plainly what stood between him and the life he actually wanted. Elias told him the truth without embellishment. His mother's immigration paperwork had been stuck for 3 years in a system that seemed designed to lose things. Without it resolved, neither of them could access the kind of stability that made anything else possible. Marcus did not write a check that afternoon. He spent the following months doing something his fortune had never quite taught him how to do before. He made calls himself, sat through immigration hearings in person, connected Fatima's case with an attorney who specialized in exactly this kind of tangled paperwork, and did not stop until the file that had been stuck for 3 years finally moved. He did not buy Elias a new life. He simply cleared, one document at a time, the obstacles standing in their way. A year later, Elias is enrolled in a magnet school for medicine and science, still stops by Gate 3 some afternoons just to say hello to Consuela, and still keeps a single orange in his backpack. Never assume the smallest hands in the room are the least capable, and never forget that the knowledge which saves a life is sometimes carried by the person nobody in the terminal ever thought to look at twice. Thank you for joining. Just a moment. We're so glad you're here.